Have you ever got to meet a billionaire? I did one time, and I would say it left a mark. He made quite an impact. But interestingly, there was a guy in church, because I was still a pastor. This time is before I became a builder. There was a older man. I'm telling you, a little old man, frail little guy, probably not more than 130 pounds, kind of decided he was going to impart some information to me. And I was curious, but I wasn't totally enamored by it. But he said, Larry, I don't want you to make the mistakes I've made. I've made mistakes. I've made financial mistakes, Larry, and I don't want you to make them. And I just avoided risk. Larry, I avoided risk at all costs, and it has really cost me. And he goes, I'm 72 years old, and I've lived in regret half my life because I didn't take more risks, Larry. And my wife and I, we got married in our 20s, and we bought a home, and we worked so hard because we thought debt was the worst thing, and we thought risk was a horrible thing. And we got that house paid off, and it was pretty easy for us to do it. We did it in about 7 or 8 years. It was just a little 2-bedroom house, 800 square feet. And, I had a pretty good job. We could have got a bigger one, but we just did what everybody said was the most cautious thing to do. And I lived a very cautious life, and I really regret it. And so he told me, he goes, Larry, I raised 3 kids in a 2-bedroom house. I always had extra money, and I always have regretted I think he told me for 36 years, half my life, I've regretted living such a risk-free life. Then the next year, 1993, I met Red McComb, another adventure, the luxury of having David Wood for my only sibling, and he just took such good care of me. I mean, my brother invited me to a team barbecue at David Robinson's house, and actually my brother invited David Robinson to our house. So the team owner, there's interesting things, and I wasn't a player. I didn't understand it, but the owner wanted to get to know the players. Those guys, if they're that rich and they're having players, they like the players. They love to be affiliated with the sports. I mean, Red McComb ended up owning an NFL team, and then twice he helped found, I believe, the San Antonio Spurs, and then he purchased his partners out later and owned it all by himself. So he invited all the players over, and I don't think most of the players wanted to go. My brother was happy to go, and he knew I'd like to go, and I had no inclination of being in business. And there are some of you right now that you're listening to this and you're going, I don't want to be in business, but I kind of do. I'm curious about it, but I'm fearful and I'm afraid of going into business because I just want to do what I know I should do. And I think, Larry, that is how I should live. But I'm telling you that some of you are going to regret just following the most conservative path, just avoiding risk at all costs. It's not the way that I want to live, and I would not encourage you to live that way. If you want to live that way, that's fine. I've always been more of the person of, go big or go home. And I didn't have the confidence to do that the first half of my life. In my 20s, I wasn't like that. I wasn't like this. But I believe that the destiny of God got on my life, and I began to run, and I felt the wind of God at my back. And I think that some of you understand what I'm talking about. But it was so amazing to get to be influenced by Red McComb. He just invited us out to his ranch. I remember that he had 8 ranches, and this ranch was like 8,200 acres. And it was kind of hilarious. I mean, I had no idea how much he was worth. He didn't say. I had to study it later. Like 10 years later, I didn't really care. I was just a simple associate pastor at the time. But he had the best bass fishing ponds, and I was a pretty good fisherman. I still love fishing. I hadn't got to catch a lot of bass at that point in my life. My brother and I were just hammering bass in one of these 3 ponds. I mean, he had 8,200 acres, whatever it was, 8,800 acres. He had prize longhorn beef, and then he said, hey, boys, he had a good drawl, Red did, I'm going to take you on out in my Jeep. He had a Willys Jeep, the way I remember it. Um, the window was folded down like this, and it was open. It was really not anything fancy. We're driving around out there with a Billionaire, and the other guy had gone home, I think. I mean, maybe Benny Del Negro was with us too, but I don't know if he stayed for that. And Red just wanted to drive us around on his 8,200 acres, and we crossed through a gate. Now there's no more cattle. There's zebras. There's some giraffes. There's some water buffaloes. There's some gazelles. It's like, what in the world? Red, what do you do? Yeah, well, I like exotic animals. And my brother goes, why do you like exotic animals? He goes, David, I really like exotic animals. And we're going like, why do you? I mean, they're cool, but why would some Texan? He goes, every one of those is a tax write-off. Every one of those animals. I get paid to raise those animals. And I remember he said, Larry, look at that big bull over there. That weighs over a ton. It takes almost 10 acres of land to support that bull. See that little gazelle? I can get more than one of those per acre. My exotic animals are great investments. I was like, oh my goodness, this guy is so intentional. Every single thing he does. From what I read about him in Wikipedia, because I never got to see him another day, after that. But I've read, and he died a couple years back. He lived to a very ripe old age, highly regarded from everything I knew. He got up to 55 dealerships, and I think that he told us, not bragging, because he was a very humble man. He said, I remember him saying something like, selling $250 million worth of cars a year. And so I was just so shocked by what he was like. So those two older men, one was 72. Actually, they were probably both about 70 at that point. And they pulled me aside and they gave examples. Red really didn't see me as somebody. He was just happy to speak in to anybody. And I felt like it was like really like a grandfatherly role. I was in my late 20s at that time. And he just wanted to have an impression. And he wanted us to be different because he spent the time. He wasn't talking down to us, he was talking across to us. I felt more like a grandson, and I don't think it was that. I just think he was realizing that his life was fully realized, and he wanted to help as many other people down the obvious path of enormous success that he had. And so now I'm going to kind of turn a corner here, and I'm going to, you see behind me these books. I love books. I never thought I'd get to write a book. I don't know if you know what it's like to write a book. It's kind of interesting. And you may not know, but I don't need to write books. But it's what I feel like I'm called to do. Now I'm going to be a little bit honest with you, and it's kind of a funny. It's a little embarrassing to say this, but I don't know, you gentlemen, and I know 2 out of 3 that watch are gentlemen, men who watch, and a lot of you are closer to my age. I became a grandparent 16 months ago, and I have 2 grandsons now, and I have a granddaughter on the way. And I don't know what it was like when you had kids, but I knew we were going to have kids. I was excited to have kids. I really rationally wondered about whether I thought I don't really like other people's kids. I don't really understand the kid thing. I think it's important that we have kids, but I'm telling you, it was a miraculous thing when I saw my daughter Madeline. For the first time, it was instant bonding, and I was just taken back at what God did. And as my kids and their family, became pregnant, I wondered if how I would be as a grandparent. And I don't know if I've told the channel, I've told people that I didn't have any connection with my grandfathers. I don't remember either one of my grandfathers holding my hand. I don't remember them walking me to the store. They never bought me ice cream. Um, the way that and the roles in Western culture today of grandparents are far different than the roles that I had. I mean, both my grandfathers were very middle of the road economically, challenged realistically more than middle of the road. They were challenged, and they had a lot of other siblings and kids, and kids were no big deal. I think I was number 7 on one and number 8 on the other side, so ain't no thing but a chicken wing. I knew I was never a big deal to either one of them, and I don't remember them touching me. I don't remember one time me touching them or them touching me. I love my grandson, but I didn't know how I was going to really love him. I kind of looked at him a little bit like a China doll, and I am nervous. I mean, even though, at 16 months now, he's not small, but it was kind of fun because he came the first time. He's been to our house numerous times, but we wanted to give the kids a break, and so he spent the night with Grandma and Grandpa. And I've been working on videos, and I'm in my office, and it's a cool, place, and I think just it's a good man place. It's got a great vibe. I love this place, and he was very enamored by it, and he kept wanting to come in, and I would make time for him. Hello. And
you gotta hold this careful.
I'm happy to tell you.
Is it Grandpa?
Hey, can you say something? Hello.
Happy to tell you, I had a great bonding weekend with my grandson, and there's nothing like when he puts his arms out, up, 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 up. And so I became smitten with my grandson, and he's kind of got me, wrapped around his middle finger, and he's not going to grow up without memories of me. And, it's not really competition, but it's kind of like I am going to work hard to be the best grandpa. My wife knew that I was going to, engage somewhere before 2 years old, and then I'm going to be getting down on the floor, and I'm going to start wrestling him, and I'm going to race him as long as I can beat him, and then I'm going to stop racing him. That's how come I stopped racing my son when he turned about 13, because I couldn't beat him anymore, so I felt led to stop racing. But I can't wait to wrestle my grandson. And why am I saying this? Because I don't want to lead a life of regret with the way that I handle my grandson. I realize, I'm going to tell you, you might think this is very mean, but I did one thing with each grandma, never a thing with each grandpa. And the one thing that one grandma did is took me to McDonald's for the first time. And I got to get whatever I wanted, and I got a Big Mac, and I was, that was a challenge then to eat a Big Mac. And then the other one saved her money up because her husband, my grandpa, drank a lot of their money away, and so she had to take in clothes to wash, and she saved money, and she didn't drive. She was too nervous to drive. It didn't seem weird then, but it does seem weird now. And so she asked if she could take my brother and I, and we had 2 cousins, and she took us to the circus that was over in Portland. We lived in Vancouver, so it was only about a 3-mile drive to a place called Jansen Beach. And then she paid for us to ride around on an elephant. So that's the only time I ever got to ride on an elephant. My grandma took me. So, that was one of my fondest memories with that grandma, and I knew that she loved me. But she didn't go way out of her life for me. And then when I could drive later at 16, 17, she really started putting pressure on. And then when I went to college, she's like, "Hey, Larry, why don't you come over and see me?" And I never said this to her because I wanted to honor, but I'm going to tell you what I wrestled with what I thought. Um, she kept saying, you need to come over. You should come over and see me, and we could talk. And what I realized is, if you don't invest, you didn't invest in me the first 12 years of my life, and because of that, I don't have a big desire to invest in you the last 12 years of your life. That's not very nice, but when you lead your life in a way that leads to regret, you will have regrets. And I never told her that, so she may not have understood it. I don't think it's really fair to put somebody to that. But I've learned since I've been very young that there's a well-lived life is very intentional, and it's not the easiest, and it's not necessarily the hardest. You don't need to go through the stupid things. You can lead a wise life. Well, what does a wise life look like? You see these books around here? These books have served me very well. And you might think this is kind of funny, but it's a little bit like being a grandfather. My grandson Caden was so funny. We got him this thing. It's kind of like a porcupine or something. It's a plastic thing about the size of a cantaloupe. It had a bunch of plastic big quills that are about the size of my finger. And so he would grab one of the quills of the porcupine and his fingers would be shaking and he would put it in there and then he'd look up at me and I would go, "Good job, Caden." And then he would go pick up another quill, a different one, and he would find the hole and he would move it over there. And then finally, it took him quite a few seconds. He would get it in there, and he'd look up at me, and I'd let him know. It's kind of funny how he wanted me. He wanted to see me respond, to his effort of doing that thing, and it's kind of funny, but I don't need to sell books to change my lifestyle. But it's a way that I don't know, you may not like this. I'm just being real to you. It's a little bit like but what I'm saying is whether you're a little 16-month-old guy or whether you're a 61-year-old guy, when you do some things that you think are going to make a difference, I just think you like to see if people see it, and so you might go, well, Larry, is this book the best book that I could buy? I don't really like to buy books, and if that's you, then I'm going to talk to you like the little frail man did in the fancy Denny's, where he's like, hey, don't live like that. Don't do that. The reason that these books are here and they're all over my office is because each one of those was an investment of my money to buy them and then my time and effort to read them. And there's hardly any book in here that I liked every page. In fact, if I even like 1 in 5 pages, that's really rare because I'm usually honestly just looking for one thing, just one life-changing thing in a book. And in a good book, I might have 2 things like that hit me, and in a fantastic book, 3. And there's Christian books and there's secular books. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was one of the early adapters of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so some of the people who jumped in harder than me have far surpassed me. But I've followed the principles of the current economy with Rich Dad Poor Dad, where, I have rentals, and I think that Kiyosaki is a really brilliant I don't think he's a brilliant author because most of his books aren't that good, but he's a brilliant thinker and he's passionate about it. And so I don't know if my new book is going to, on every page, change your life. I doubt it will. But I think there's a few things that could change your life. And I think if you want to lead a life without regret, I'm going to tell you that I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours preparing for it. And I'm really glad that I asked Lauren to do it with me. And I'll tell you, there's two reasons why. First of all, Lauren is a worker and she is a smart woman, but she gets stuff done. And she's an amazing marketer. And I didn't sell my books at all until I really met Lauren. And I know some of you bought them before Lauren, but many of her YouTube people have become my adherents of my channel as well, and I appreciate what she did, and I think it was a great partnership. And I think if you asked her, you would say that working with Mark was fantastic, and we're both big fans of Kindle Direct Publishing. It's awesome. I don't have to do anything, and I make a few dollars, and she gets a couple dollars. She gets a little less at the beginning and a little more after a certain number of books, but she's making a return from every single one, and after a few months I might make a return as well. I'm not worried about it. I write the books because I want to make a difference. I want you to have an intentional, skillful life, and there's things that I think a skillful, intentional life includes. And I would say, if you want to skillfully win in the game of life, you need to be prepared. You need to gain from other people's perspective, and you can forge ahead the simple way and the cautious way, and you can not take any risk, and then I think that you will live your life with regret. And so maybe I'm being just the simple little baby who's just trying to put the porcupine quills in, and maybe you're going, well, don't buy the book because I need to sell the book. I think if I could challenge you, Lauren tries to read a book. I've seen her say this on her channel. She tries to read a book every week. I would say if you can read a book a month, I think that is, you are never going to regret that. And if you go, well, I want to read more than that, but I just want to read fun books. Well, I'm saying, like, fictional books are fine, but you can learn things. I've read plenty of Grisham books myself, and I've had those times. But I would say there's practical things, but the thing is, this is a unique time. We are at a unique time in history. There's financial implications with this book. I mean, I'm going to tell you some of the prophetic things that you're going to be able to read about. Kim Clement talked about when Trump comes in, and we all thought it was going to be consecutive, but he says Trump is he goes, my David is going to deal viciously, and that's kind of the loose interpretation of what he said. He's going to deal violently with three things: socialism, human secularism, and debt. And you don't hear people talking about it, but Kim Clement prophesies that there's going to be an enormous forgiveness of debt. Well, you go, well, I don't know if I believe that. I don't care if you don't believe it. I believe it, and I wouldn't have thought that except Kim Clement said it. And then I've been realizing, when you look at all the intellectual people with money, our country cannot continue with the debt load that there is. There's going to have to be a forgiveness of debt. And so as you come into money from the dinar or XRP or whatever, so many of you are going to have the mindset, I got to get rid of my debt. I got to get rid of my debt. Well, do you got to get rid of your debt if there's going to be debt forgiveness? Well, why do you think that, Larry? Well, you got to buy the book. I took every single reference that Kim Clement made to prophetic finances, and I made a list of it. And so, that's a motivation to some of you. I'm very curious. I'm going to act on those things. Zion Oil and Gas. There's very strategic U.S. manufacturers that are currently having a tremendous bad time that Kim Clement says are going to, he even gives dollar amounts about Ford stock, what the future of Ford stock is. And so I think that's fascinating that he did that. And so I think that there's a financial return for this book. I've never seen a book that has a prophetic list of investments from a godly person. But I also think that there's huge encouragement in there because it explains where we're going and the revival. I talked about it a lot before I knew as much about it. But this time I was so enamored. If you go back to my older videos, you're going to see how I'm talking, and Brandon talks actually about it, and Amanda Grace and Julie talks about the glory is coming. And I've said it before, I think it's going to come when the Chiefs win the Super Bowl again. I don't think that they have to for the glory to come, but I think it's going to be, the middle of February, early February. I think the glory of God's going to be poured out. But Kim Clement talked about in the outpouring that music is going to be impacted, and there's going to be a new genre of music that's going to start in LA among people of, I think it's an Asian community, but it's going to bounce right into India, and it's going to become an international explosion of a cross-cultural. And what's crazy to me is that Kim Clement prophesies that the Arab nations like Iran, the youth of Iran are going to be super attracted to the youth of America, and there's going to be a new unity among the youth in the kingdom, and so even the Jews are going to have messianic experiences that are crazy. And so I don't list every single one of those that Kim Clement talks about, but there's a list of what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And these are things that haven't happened yet. And, I could have misrecorded it. I could have put it in the wrong order. But it really seems like it flows. It seems like it makes sense. So I think it's nice to have a perspective, a godly perspective of passion, of realizing that there's a destiny on your life, that you can invest in yourself. And you should invest in yourself on a monthly basis, and you should invest in your investments on a consistent basis as well. And some of you may go, well, I hardly have any money. I just don't have that much money. Well, Kim Clement talks about the reason that we came up with the name The Rise of Kingdom Billionaires is because Kim Clement prophesied time and again. He says some people for as little as $5,000 invested will end up being billionaires. Another time Kim says, God's saying to Kim, I want to talk to my church about billionaires, but 99% of my church can't believe it. They don't have faith for it. Kim, I want to talk to my church about billionaires. So some of you don't have a lot of money, and you're going, I feel in my heart that I should be, moving towards business, or I should, become an investor, but I don't have a family history of doing that. I don't have the knowledge. Well, this is a time that I think chains are going to be broken and that destinies are going to be changed. And so I would just encourage you, if you don't read books, then, my life is not going to be impacted financially. But I think what an opportunity at such an opportune time to be giving a warning, to be standing on the wall and blowing the horn and saying, hey, this is a time of divine interaction. It's a divine opportunity. And I just think that I hope that you don't read the books. It's odd, for me to say it, and so I guess I'm done saying it. But is this, Larry, just a big commercial? Yeah, it kind of is. I'm kind of telling you where I'm at and where I'm going. I love that I got to do 70 videos that were absolutely free last year. But videos alone aren't going to change your life. You need to invest in yourself. More importantly, you need to invest in your family and in your relationship with God. But you need to invest in yourself. And I think you need to run with people who are running after God. You need to set new standards. You're responsible for the life that you lead. Are you going to regret it? Are you going to take too little risk? What track are you on right now? So we're going to do some cool things that I enjoy doing. I love boating. It's my dream that I get another boat like my wife and I so enjoyed for a number of years up in the Puget Sound, so I can invite some of you. We're going to do a cruise. There's going to be events that cost money. They're going to be great values. Some of you are going to love to go. Not everybody that wants to go will get to go. I don't feel bad about bringing great opportunities that you can invest in for yourself. It's not how I'm going to make my living, but I can't think of how to impact you anymore by doing things for free. So some things are going to cost money, and I'm going to keep bringing great videos if I can. Pray for me and the channel. I love that you watch the channel. It does make a big difference if you like the videos, and you know, I don't I'm torn at times. You can see maybe that I'm trying to take a lot more time to do better videos, and these rambling videos like this I've been maybe trying to avoid, but I just think it's super important that we live skillful, intentional lives on this earth. We have the game of life. Some of us get distracted by monopolies. Some of us feel like we're stuck in a pit. Some of us just want to go fish. I don't mind doing that once in a while. Some people go too crazy on the risk, and even if you don't, sometimes it'll come back and bite you. And so there's the game and there's rules. And some people play to win, and some people play to not lose. And I would encourage you to lead lives of faith, to be men and women of destiny, to run after the calling that God has put on your life, to prepare yourself. I love to encourage people to live lives that they won't regret. So I pray that you would lead your life well and have no regrets, that you'd seek first the kingdom of God, and that when you're done, you would hear those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant."